Thanks, Manny, and thanks for the opportunity to share this with yourself and your audience. So, yeah, Chilwa Minerals came on the ASX only about sort of 7 weeks ago. We're exploring for a major mineral resource in Malawi. Thanks, Abby. That's our important information, which you'll all need to look at a point. Thanks for that. So we've got a fairly prospective asset. It's an 878 square kilometre tenement. Previous work has been done on it, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But it is quite a large area. There's some pretty good prospective people nearby us that are listed on the ASX and TSX. And the project actually benefits from a pit-to-port solution by the Nacala Deepwater Port. So just to the north of us, there is access all the way through to by railway. There is an inferred resource. So we actually have a 61 million tonne heavy mineral sands at a 3.9%. At a 1% cut-off grade. So for a new company to have an inferred resource, it gives us a great starting point, and that's predominantly from the work that was done sort of 10 years ago by the vendor. We're drill ready to go. We're about to start a campaign. We're fully permitted. Our drilling contractor has had training on site, so we're just about ready. It's an emerging jurisdiction, Malawi, so the government's really starting to move their GDP away from sort of rural and into sort of the perspective that mining and development can have. And interestingly enough, we note with interest that Rio Tinto recently made a $40 million investment into a junior sovereign metals that have got a rutile deposit. So we can really start to see that people are looking at Malawi. We've had a recent success with our IPO. It's a pretty difficult market, but I think we were grateful to get it away. And to anyone watching that's a shareholder, I thank you. But I think that's because I'd like to think we're pretty well priced and we've got a pretty good asset. And part of the arrangement with our vendor and our major shareholder now is that we'll put $4.5 million into developing the asset. So our vendor is Motor Angel, or Luso Global Mining, was the company that I worked for before and discovering the asset. They've been in Malawi for 25 years, so to have that in-country experiences, you can't put that on a balance sheet. So to have them there to helping us along, and over 400 staff is fantastic. Thanks, Abby. So corporate snapshot, 67 million shares on issue, market cap of just under 12. The share registry, as I said, 31% is from Luso Global Mining. Those shares, there was no cash transaction done. Those shares are escrowed for 2 years, and 50% are actually voluntarily escrowed for a further 12 months. So that's 3 years. Our board is Philip Lucas, executive chairman, non-executive chairman, myself. Manuel Motor is the grandson of the founder of the Motor Angel Group. To have him on the board, he's the deputy CEO of Motor Angel as well. To have him on our board is fantastic to give us some of that global exposure. And Alexander Shaw, Dr. Alexander Shaw, is a PhD in geology, is the managing director of Luso, and he gives me a lot of background in relation to the asset. So it's great to have him as well. Thanks, Abby. So strategic location, pretty stock standard. That's where we are. Just to give people an insight. Thanks, Abby. So this is the size of our tenements. Everything I'm talking about is actually about 471 square kilometres. Our overall size is actually 878. And that was found, we actually, in doing some DD about 12, 18 months ago, we uncovered an area to the south, which we actually went and sought, and is now part of our whole licence. But everything with our resource that I'm referring to is just that first 471 square kilometres. We've got 4 main deposits. Halala, Maposa, Puyu Puyu and Bimbi, and actually got 10 targets within that. So we actually have a pretty extensive area. So we've got a fair bit of work in front of us. And as I said, the resource I'm about to talk about is just that 471 square kilometres. Thanks, Abby. So we have a 61 million tonne inferred resource. And as I said, this is done by the previous vendors, Motor Angel, and we have a great target and a great pathway to lead us through. The deposits there you see on the left add up to that 61 million tonnes. That is at a 1% cutoff. Our grade is 3.9. It's quite high. If you can look at some of the THM ones there, we've got some as high as 7.1. I'm going to draw your attention to the slimes. The slimes is basically your waste. Now that is reasonably high. It's not a game changer. But what we uncovered, and the reason I draw your attention to this, is that there were errors in the lab in the previous work done. And that's all stated in our IGR and the prospectus. And one of our jobs is actually to understand what that slime level is. So for those that don't know mineral sands too well, it's basically a waste. So if you could ever imagine this being a project and 100% of something going through and 13% was waste, that's obviously no good. The slimes are just your small little particles. Now, we believe that once we do that work, that number could come down, and therefore the waste won't be as high. So one of the important things we're going to be doing is to test that with assays. Thanks, Abby. These are some recent regional discoveries. We're in some good jurisdiction. People in West Australia may or may not know of Lindian Resources. They've just announced a rare earth resource, a maiden rare earth resource. Macango Resources abut us to the south. They are listed on the TSX. As you can see, there's us right in the middle, and it's about 50 kilometres as the crow flies between us and Lindian. But we've got they're different deposits, but it gives you the size of what we have. Thanks, Abby. So this is our drill plan, and this is really exciting. So one of the things about our drill plan and the errors we want to learn from the past was that there was this resource was done and drilled with the air core drilling. We're going to be using sonic drilling. Sonic drilling is a lot more efficient way of drilling for what we have around water tables. It enables you to extract 100% or 95 to 100% of the core by removing the water. This is really significant and a low-hanging fruit for us, because in the previous work done, there was only the recoverables were only about 70%. So the benefit of us using sonic drilling, and we've got a really good contract rate with our vendor. They've actually bought a sonic rig, and so that's going to be beneficial to shareholders, and the rate that we've got is that we'll be able to actually only twin. So twinning is going back over the old ground, and you can see that in the yellow there. So we'll only need to twin 5%. Now, the footwall has never been defined. So with these deposits, they were formed over millions of years. And with the previous campaign, we don't know how deep it got. They only got to 6 metres on the previous campaign. Now, so with all this work that was done, we think we can go deeper by using sonic drilling, and that will give us a lot more understanding of the resource. You can see there in the black spot the sheer size of what we have. So we're just talking about that little area there over that whole tenement. So the sonic drilling will deliver us better samples, will enable us to go deeper, and we'll actually be able to, because of the twinning, we'll be able to see, hopefully, an improvement in the size of the resource. So thanks, Abby. The assays, there's also, and I refer back to those slimes, these were errors that were done in the lab. As I said, this is stated in our IGR. We want to make sure that we've got this process absolutely down to a fine art in relation to making sure that any errors in the past aren't replicated. So about 6 months ago, we came up with a plan in consultation with our partners to make sure we did the right thing and the most appropriate thing to make sure that these assays are tested correctly. The material will be driven down from Malawi via a truck. We will then be split into ALS South Africa into smaller samples. The reason we're doing this is that ALS South Africa are a world-class lab, but they're not quite set up for mineral sands. But everyone knows here in WA that ALS in Perth, they are a world leader in mineral sands, and they're the ones that we actually need to do it for us. So making sure that we have world-class facilities and all these errors are not replicated will add a lot of value, we hope, going forward. So the material will come down, go to South Africa, we'll put it on a plane, and they'll be in 3 kilo bags, down into 500 grams, and then sent to Perth. We'll also be sending the other ones by boat to do metallurgical test work, the bigger samples, that can come later. So we really want to make sure we've got this process. We'll also be testing for rare earth within the assemblage. Thanks, Abby. This is an interesting slide that a lot of our peers use, and just to give the people in the audience an understanding of mineral sands. Your traditional things are ilmenite, rutile, zircon. They're used for things like paints and pigments and the like, and zircon's used for ceramics. Interestingly enough, the way these assemblages, or the economics are changing. Things like garnet, for example, A scoping study was done on this project back in 2015. We can't mention any of that, and we haven't mentioned any of that, but the work has been done in the details of it. And garnet was seen to be a trash material. And now here we are basically 10 years later, and it's got economic value. Things like the rare earth, the monazite and the xenotime, again, has value. So that's why we'll be testing for all these materials, not just those standard heavy mineral sands, traditional minerals, but we're quite excited about what we could potentially uncover. Thanks, Abby. ESG is very important. All companies need to do it. We're no different. We've started community engagement, baseline data collection has happened, and this is an important part of our process as well. Thanks, Abby. So importantly, what we need to do in relation to those materials coming down, this drilling program is going to, the first one from Maposa is going to take about 12 weeks. We're not going to just stockpile all that and then bring it to assays. Metaphorically, we want a conveyor belt of material coming from Malawi down to South Africa, then to Perth. So we want to make sure that there's a continual feed. That means we're actually keeping the market informed. So drilling is going to be, for Maposa, is going to be about 12 weeks. The great thing about sonic drilling is that, as I said, it's a bit quicker, and also for us, really uncovering how deep this assay goes, highlighting the fact that previously it only got to 6 metres. We'll get the samples down to Malawi, we'll split them up, we'll move them, as I said, over to ALS in Perth, and then we'll start feeding the market on a regular basis as those assays come through. And as I said, testing for things like those heavy mineral, the rare earth side, the slimes, and those sorts of things. And then that will actually help us determine where we go next as we start getting this information. As I previously said on those slides, we've got 10 targets we can look at. We've got a big area, and that does not include the extra 400 odd square kilometres that we're yet to get to. And if that strand line potentially goes down there, you're actually looking at, we hope, a significant asset. And particularly, as I said, because we don't know how deep this asset goes. And that further drilling will also, as I said, expand. So we've got a very exciting sort of 12 weeks in front of us. There'll be lots of information coming. It's been a fantastic journey, and we're all really excited about what lies before us. Thanks, Abby.
Great. Thanks, Cadell. That was terrific. Can I just a quick question? You touched on this briefly at the start of the presentation. You spoke about your partner in Malawi, Motorengel, and sort of how significant they are within Malawi, but in general, clearly they're going to be a great partner for you in Malawi. Can you give us an idea of how Motorengel are actually helping you along the way on a day-to-day basis at the moment? How are they making your life easier? Where are they pretty key for you guys?
I think that's a great question, Matty, and one that I've actually had a fair bit, because the value of that, as I said, you can't really put it on a balance sheet, but it ranges from little things to helping me get a visa in country, to having an office that they're going to have for us for a while, to helping us with equipment. As I said, we're basically ready to drill within 7 to 8 weeks of listing, which I think is a wonderful achievement. And they've been able to help us put all those things together, with a geologist. We've got an arrangement where obviously we help those things through, but all those little things to all those bigger things, technical people and the like. So having them there, I was in country not that long ago, had meetings up in the Ministry of Mines, and you were introduced as a partner, for want of a better word. So their in-country experience, and obviously Manuel Motor as well, being the grandson of the founder of Motorengel, really helps as well. But I think it ranges, Manny, from those little tiny things of documentation through to having boots on the ground. And it's been as I said, it's hard to put a value on that on a balance sheet. But and also, for example, they purchased a drill rig for us. So they purchased a drill rig. We've got a really great contract rate, which adds value to shareholders. and that's ready to go now. We did that basically as we were listing. So if it was another way, you'd have to get a rig, procure, look at pricing, all that sort of thing. So it's very, very helpful.
Yeah. Okay. That's great, and a clear advantage for you going forward. There are a couple of questions that are coming up. One in particular, there are some questions around sort of asking, can you elaborate perhaps a little bit on, and you touched on this as well earlier, that, in addition to, to some of the other elements that you're coming across, you mentioned rare earths. There are some questions around rare earths. What sort of rare earths potential is there, or are you seeing at this point?
Well, look, at the moment, we haven't started drilling, so we're basing this on historical, and we're basing it, I suppose, on the mineral sands assemblage. So mineral sands, and I refer back to that slide of monazite and xenotime. They're part of the mineral sands assemblage, and that's why, as a board, and you look at the people that are nearest, Lindian and Macango, different styles of assets. They're hard rock, we're alluvial. But what we did as a board is we made a conscious decision that we needed to test for those. So part of the process with ALS is that, it's not just going to be testing for traditional, ilmenite and zircon, for example. So the monazite and xenotime are part of that. The breakdown of that happens a bit further, but for us, that we will need to drill. We need to get, as I said, all our assays to ALS, and we'll be testing it. But they're the common rare earth, I suppose, products that are found in the assemblage. Okay, great.
And one last thing, you did put the slide up with the sort of a calendar, but just to remind everyone on today's webinar, given you're expecting to start drilling shortly, when are we likely to see the first bits of news come out on that particular drilling?
Well, if you recall, one of the things I said is that we want to be really meticulous, and I think we've one of the great things we've done is put processes in place and learnings from the past. So it's a 12-week campaign for Maposa. We're not going to just drill and then send assays down. I said metaphorically, it's that conveyor belt, for want of a better word. So in 2-week intervals, we'll take material down to South Africa. It'll get split. That happens pretty quickly. Then you put on a plane. You get into the line here at ALS in Perth, because these critical minerals are, everyone's sort of looking to get them tested. So I suppose, from the time we drill, the first ones would be 4 to 5 weeks, give or take. And then we like to think every 2 weeks from there. But we've already set up our processes. We've been meticulous. We've already got our logistics company arranged, exportation, all those key things you need to make sure. And also ALS in Perth here have got their own quarantine division, so we can bring those assays straight in. As I said, Matty, we'd like to think all these boxes we're liking to tick from a project management perspective to create value for people straight away. So, in a summary, I'd say, 3 to 4 weeks, 5 weeks from the first lot, and then every sort of 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks from there, in about 5 to 6 spaced intervals.